Hey there everyone, welcome back to another Impressions video, and today we're going to be talking about this game right here. This is Gotoku Zero, or I guess it would be Yakuza Zero in English, but yes, this is one of my favorite series. I'm sure you guys who watch this channel know this. I talk about this game all the time, well the series all the time, and I love it. But this is the second in the series that came out on the PS4, and I guess it's a mainline game. I mean, it's not six, but it's still it's like a prequel to the original game. Um, so yeah, let's talk about it. This might be a long video. I don't know. I'll probably forget a lot of stuff that I want to talk about because this game is huge. There's a ton of stuff to do, but I'll try and get as much of it in as I can, or at least as I can remember while I'm doing this video. So, yeah, so let's talk about this. If you've never played one of these games, don't let anybody ever tell you that this game is like Grand Theft Auto. I know a lot of people want to say that, but those people are wrong. Take it from me, they're wrong. This game is a lot more like a spiritual successor to something like Shenmue. It's a lot more like that than it is something like Grand Theft Auto. Um, it's not really a sandbox. You can't go wherever you want, and it's not a very big place. You have two places you can go, and neither of them are really big. You can run from one end to the other side in less than a minute. So it's not like Grand Theft Auto. I know every time I review one of these games, I say that because still all the time I hear people say, "Oh, it's like Grand Theft Auto." It's not. But what it is like, as I said, is Shenmue in the sense that you run around town and you fight people in a kind of it's not really as much like Virtua Fighter as Shenmue is, but you know, it's like a 3D beat 'em up. It's essentially an action RPG with a with a beat 'em up, kind of a 3D beat 'em up style game. Um, but that's just the basic gameplay. Even that is a lot more complicated than I'm making it out to be because there's a lot of different things you can do. But I just wanted to give a kind of a baseline for people who have never played any game in this series. But for people who know, they know what I'm saying already. But this game does have some different things. It has some different things than the original. Not the original. Well, I mean, obviously the original, but the entire mainline series now. It takes a lot of things from Ishin, the previous game that was released last year, and kind of transplants them to this game. So the first thing I'll talk about actually is not in the game. It's the Vita application. They made another Vita application for this game, and that means like essentially they took some small parts out of the game and put them into an application for the Vita, which is probably the best idea Sega has ever come up with. It's such a good idea. It comes out about 2 weeks before the actual game, and you can kind of start playing the parts of the game. You can learn the fighting system for one style. I'll get into styles later, but you can learn the fighting system, get some fights in, get build up a little bit of experience or money, and kind of do a few mini games or whatever, and it's free. So it kind of is like a bit of a hype builder for the game, and then you can transfer that save data back to your Vita. And then when you get the actual game, more stuff will unlock. So when you're on the go, maybe you want to build up, get some more money. You can do that by uploading and downloading your save to your Vita. It's a really cool thing. It's like a lot of things that nobody else. I can't think of any other game company who's done anything like that, and it's amazing. It was great for Ishin. It's great for Yakuza Zero, though. To be honest, the Ishin application was way better than the Yakuza Zero application because there's less stuff to do in the Zero application. But that was an awesome kind of hype builder for the game. So I was playing that for a bit before the game started. So I was, you know, relatively okay when I started the game. Like I didn't max everything out like I did for Ishin because um, there just wasn't enough variety in the application in the beginning. So there's that. But it's a good idea, and if you want to just test out like how the game fights or whatever, how the fighting system works, you can just download the Vita application and try it out from the Japanese PSN store. It's free. You're not losing anything. But continuing on about this, the game it's a little bit different, as I'm saying, because it has fighting styles that you can choose from. If you played Ishin or Restoration, as the English for Ishin is, um, you would you would know what that means. Like in that game, you can switch between four different fighting styles, um, and in this game, they kind of pick up on that theme and give you well. There's four different fighting styles, but you really like throughout the game, you're only using three, but you can switch between them in cases that you need them. So, like, some enemies are really fast, and you might want to use a different fighting style against them. And some fighting styles are better against certain kind of boss characters than others are. So, it's pretty cool. And you got, like, two characters to choose from. You have, of course, Kazuma Kiryu, who is the main character in pretty much all the games, and um, Majima Goro, who is in a bunch of the games. I don't think he's in all of them. He probably is though. He's a super popular character. But you can play as those two, and they don't have any interaction really. There's not any point in the game where you're like teaming up and fighting together. You're just kind of running two parallel stories that are intertwined, but not directly. So it's a pretty cool system though, because generally the game works in a way that you kind of like play two chapters as one character and then like switch over to the other character, and it's a totally different place. So you get the two towns. You have Kamurocho and Doten Sotenbori. Um, so those two places, one is in Osaka, one is Tokyo, and they're based on various real places. But it's actually pretty interesting because you have, three styles with Kiryu that you learn, and they're wildly different. And then you have three styles with Majima that are totally different also. And they're fun to learn. You get to unlock parts of it, special abilities, and you can kind of unlock a master class abilities for each of those by doing sub stories, side stories, whatever. Um, and that's all pretty good. But there are so many sub stories in this game. I think nearly maybe 90 total. I'd have to maybe almost 100 total. It's pretty close to 100, I think. It might be 90, but it might be more than that. I don't quite remember. It's 90, I think, actually. I think it's exactly 90, but I might be forgetting something. But there's a lot of sub stories you can get, and and they've actually made it harder to get all the sub stories because, for example, in Yakuza 5 or in 4 actually too, I think, probably less than 5. I don't remember, but in 4 you could definitely for all the sub stories a mark appeared on the map and you could just kind of run to it and figure it out. In this one, it doesn't happen that way. There's a lot of sub stories that you can't find without interacting with a bunch of characters in random places or running into people on the street or sometimes they're random from kind of activities you can do around town, which makes some of them a bit more difficult to get. But it's it's got a lot of that. So let me talk about those for the minute. You have a lot of activities you can do around town. Um, it's part of the series. There's always like a bunch of mini games and things you can do throughout the town, and this one, of course, is no exception. So you can go to course game centers like an arcade, and the game takes place in 1988. So you can go and you can play popular Sega games from the 80s. So you have um, Outrun and Space Harrier and Super Hang On, maybe, are the three games you can play. There might be more. If you get the Vita application, you can actually play some more games. But you have, it's like an extra $5 or something, and you can unlock like Super Monkey Ball and some 16-bit shooters and some other stuff, columns, stuff like that. So that's also another cool thing. But I don't think you can play them in the game itself. But in the game itself, you have arcade emulations of those three games that I mentioned, and that's another one part. But you also have like your standard Yakuza game stuff. So you have karaoke and a dance, kind of like a club dance simulator, which is difficult. I had a lot of trouble with it. Um, it took me a lot of tries to clear the sub stories for that, but it was hard. I'm just not good at those, I think, especially with the system that it was in this game. I'm just not couldn't get a couldn't get a hold of it for a long time. Took me a lot of tries. There's pocket circuit pocket circuit racing, which is like little, cars that you can kind of tune up yourself, buy a bunch of little parts and tune them and race on a kind of track. This was popular in the 80s. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember this. I know, I'm sure there's some people are, but like I'm sure a lot of people aren't. But in the 80s there was like slot cars. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's kind of that. Slot cars it's a little different, but they're it's pretty much that. You put these little cars that are tuned up with little engines and parts and things, and you race them against three other people. And there's a kind of a simulation for that, and a ton of side stories connected to it. Um, and parts are expensive, and you can find them in weird places, and some of them are hard to get. It's a lot of fun though. I had a lot of fun doing that, except for some of the final races, which were impossible without doing a lot of crazy stuff. Um, I'm trying to think what else there is. Of course, batting cages, bowling. Um, what else? I know there's other. There's t- tele tele teleclub, telephone club, which is like a kind of dating club where you sit in a booth with a telephone and girls call the phone and you just talk to them and try to get them to meet you or whatever. It's like a dating service that you pay to go to, and it's a Japanese thing. It's totally a Japanese thing. I don't even know if they still exist. I imagine they don't. I imagine if they do, it's probably not that popular. But when I first moved to Japan, they were still around. Um, but that's Terekura in and you can do that in the game. And there's lots of funny things that happen when doing that while talking on the phone and meeting people. Um, so yeah, there's a ton of stuff you can do in the game overall. And then also on top of that, there's kind of these like simulation games to get money for both characters. So Kiryu has a kind of property management sim where you kind of purchase properties and you fight battles to control the town from other people who are doing the same thing. And then Majima has like a cabaret club simulator. It's different from the other ones though. It's not like the other game where you had to kind of walk around and give hints. It's like more like a simulator in the sense that like you're just kind of going around a menu and doing a lot of stuff. Um, it's a lot of fun actually. I had a lot of fun doing it. And again, you have to fight like other groups of cabaret club people who are trying to like steal your customers or whatever. You're trying to steal their customers and all that. It's pretty in depth actually, and this there's like a big amount of storylines with the girls that work at your club too. So it's really in depth. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you can put a lot of time into it. I spent a lot of time doing that. Like I spent like a whole day just playing the simulator parts, and I still haven't finished the cabaret club simulation yet. So there's still a lot of stuff to do with that. Um, yeah, that's about it for the play spots. I guess they're called play spots in the game. I'm trying to think of. I'm looking at this little book here I have that came with the pre-order, and it lists them all in there. Oh, there's the cat fight thing, which is stupid. There's like a kind of underground fighting arena that you can't fight in. You just watch girls fight, and you kind of you don't really control the fighting. It's kind of a rock paper scissors kind of like fighting system where you choose one of those things, and the opponent will choose another one, and if you win, you get a kind of wrestling move off. Um, and eventually, one of the girls loses. It's goofy. There's also the like a image video thing. Again, this is a Japan thing, and it's a totally 80s thing. It's like a VHS tapes of like girls doing suggestive things. It's hard to explain otherwise. That's kind of what it is. Like scantily clad girl looking sexy. They're not doing anything really. Most of the time, they're just kind of lying around and smiling or making cute faces or whatever. I don't know the appeal of it, but it's popular in Japan. Still kind of is. Um, what else is there? Oh yeah, there's like a casino and like Japanese style casino and a more Western style casino. Um, so I don't know. What I'm trying to say is there's a ton of stuff to do. There's also like a weapon weapon creation system for one of the characters, and you have to like send out people on these like missions all around the world to find weapons and stuff for you. It's and like kind of recipes to build better weapons. There's so much stuff going on in this game. There's so much time to put into it and so much kind of interesting things you can do. And I haven't even touched on like the main story yet. We're like nearly 20 minutes in, and I'm just telling you about like how the world works in the game. The world itself is pretty awesome too. When I think about it, it's like I said, it's 1988 Japan, which is like Japan. This kind of era is known as the bubble period, where it's like there was tons of money everywhere. Everybody had a ton of money, and like the kind of it's like the peak of Japan's economy at that time before like the kind of recession that happened in the early 90s. And because of that, the system for the game has changed. Usually you would get experience and money separately, but this game has combined them into both money is used to buy items and for experience. It's a little bit like Dark Souls in that sense, but it's it's funny because like when you fight people on the street, instead of like blood flying off of them or sweat or whatever when you hit them, money flies out. So it's really goofy. And there's like extra like kind of mini bosses that wander around town carrying a ton of money, and you can find them. They have like the amount of money they're holding floating above their head. It's really like and they're like giants. It's like if Andre the Giant was walking around town carrying $10 million in cash, willing to fight you for it. It's kind of how it is, and there's like a bunch of different ones. So that's kind of how it. That's just the thing in the game. It's an easy way to get a bunch of money if you can win the fight. But there's a lot of weird 80s throwback stuff in there that I think like a lot of people might not recognize and because it's very Japan specific, but in other cases it's not. Like it's just 80s specific. So you'll get to hear like some kind of 80s style music and you'll think, yeah, that sounds like 80s even if it's Japanese. Or there's kind of fashion things that are going on that are 80s, definitely 80s Japan, but like you get the you can still kind of pick up the vibe of it. If you guys know what bodycon is, it's a type of dress style, and it's all over this game. And there's also these kind of like pastel colored pantsuits and things that were popular. If you, I don't know, it's hard to explain because like this is all very Japan centric. I would I think like a lot of this game would be lost in translation in the sense if it were even if it were translated, a lot of the references they're making wouldn't be very obvious to someone who doesn't like know a bit about Japan in the 80s. Um, there, I mean, but there's lots of stuff that's really 80s that happens, and you just like, like when you do the karaoke things, there's like, a part where you're like, you'll switch to like on a stage and you're wearing like a ripped off, like a t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off and a headband, and you're like totally rocking out like you're Corey Hart or something. And it's yeah, it's pretty awesome. There's a lot of stuff like that. And there's a lot of things that were like popular trends and things that were new. Like instead of a cell phone, you have a it's what they call a pocket bell, but we know them as pagers. You use a pager, but there's lots of like number codes that mean things in Japanese because you can read the numbers as words. So it's kind of like a code language that nobody uses anymore because nobody uses pagers. Um, there's lots of stuff like that, um, that I think a lot of people wouldn't be able to catch, or might like just miss it because they don't know that it actually has some meaning other than what it's saying. Um, there's even things that were popular in the 80s that were popular also in the US that it happened. They make references to like a pizza delivery in 30 minutes or less, or it's free. Like that was a big thing in the 80s. I remember that specifically. Um, there were, I'm trying to think of some other ridiculously 80s things that happened. People, someone was walking around with a cell phone, like in a, in a shoulder bag, that kind of thing. Like I remember um, those kind of cell phones in a shoulder bag. Like you had to carry the thing in a bag. Um, I think a lot of people won't remember that stuff. But unless you're old like me, or older, because those things kind of went away pretty quickly because they were ridiculously expensive and huge. But as cell phones got better, those things disappeared pretty quickly because they're unwieldy. Um, but yeah, this game has tons of stuff like that. It's just so much. It's everywhere. It oozes out of the game. And the game looks really good. Like when you go into, if you've played any of the other games and you play this one, you go into Kamurocho and you see the town. It looks a lot more 80s to me. Um, it looks grittier and dirtier and more. The area that they're in is way scummier, and that's actually true. That's how it was. There was like later on in the later, more recently, less than I maybe in the past like 10 years or so. That area in real life in that area has become less and less kind of scummy. I want to say it was like a kind of red light district, and now it's not. Now it's like barely would barely qualify as that because all of those shops that were like red light district shops are gone. That place got kind of had like a kind of renewal, and then a bunch of laws got passed to kind of get rid of those places. So a lot of those places are just gone. So this game kind of brings those all back. It makes it like a lot dirtier, a lot scummier, and the lighting effects make it really nice. Like, yeah, it just looks really great. A lot of the character models in this game look really nice. I think they're probably 3D scanned off of. I mean, because some of the people who are playing the characters are real actors, and they look just like them. um, had someone over today actually playing this with me, and she was saying like, "Oh, I know who that is. Like I know who this actor is. I've seen him before. He looks just like that. This is like perfectly spot on." And a lot of the kind of character things look pretty realistic. There are some weird things that they did in this game, though, with the character interactions. Usually in the game, there's this kind of like in the series. I'm saying like you kind of have conversations with people, and it just like they'll talk and their mouth will move and they'll do things. But in this game, there some of them don't do that for some reason. Like they're like really nice looking. the scenes that I'm like the first kind of conversation you have, it starts out like this, and like the characters' mouths don't move, and they just kind of like emote with their face, and it looks really nice. Like the quality of it is really good, but there's no speaking, and there's sound coming out of the character's voice, and they're kind of moving their head and emoting, but they're not. Their mouth isn't moving, and it's really weird, but like it looks so nice that I can't really complain. And it's not like that for everything, so it's just sometimes it becomes that. I don't know what the decision was to put those in, like not to do it consistently. It, I mean, I wouldn't mind if they were all like that, or they were. It was not like that at all. It's just kind of weird to flip them in there sometimes and not all the time. And then with no kind of rhyme or reason to it. I couldn't find any, at least, what I thought was like a realistic explanation of why it's like that. So at first I thought like it's not gonna be all like this, is it? And then it wasn't. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And then like sometimes for no reason it would switch back, and I'd be like, okay, it's this thing again. Um, yeah, that's that's kind of how it is. There's not a ton of complaints about this game. I played it, I put a lot of time into it, and there is like, of course, like the other games, if you beat all the sub stories, you can have like a final battle with and whoever. There's two in this game, obviously, but I can't remember they who their what their names were. Amen something and Amen something. But with Kiryu, you have to fight like this ridiculous Amen who has like a giant laser cannon that shoots lasers, obviously, but it also shoots like giant bombs. And then, like, for the second half of the battle, there's a helicopter dumping crap on you. It's like totally this crazy battle, but it's in the same location as all the other ones in the series, so like that kind of bullfighting ring. Um, I'm trying to think of what else is there to talk about. There's a lot, probably a lot of stuff I'm forgetting, but the main story I haven't even touched on. But it's actually less complicated than a normal Yakuza game. Usually, like the series has like all these bizarre twists, where like something that you absolutely don't expect, or like some character where there'll be like some crazy double cross and then double cross. But in this one, there wasn't really any of that. It was pretty straightforward for the most part. There were some kind of like shocking revelation parts, but like none of them were crazy twists. They all kind of fit into the same stories. So like you really did have a kind of set group of kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say like evil characters, but you did have like your kind of set group of enemies throughout the game, and it stayed pretty consistent. There wasn't any like, hidden big boss or hidden like agenda that was going on. It was pretty straightforward, which is like kind of rare for the series, because usually there's like someone who's the boss for like the first half of the game, and then like it totally switches halfway through. There's like be a big twist, and like suddenly you have like this entirely new enemy. It didn't really happen in this. So it's a lot more straightforward. But the story was actually really good. I kind of enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the way that it was split between the two characters, and that they didn't meet until like the very, very end. So it did have a lot of kind of, it did have the feel of like two separate stories that were are obviously intertwined, but so no, things will happen in one side of the story that will affect the other side of the story, but not directly. And sometimes you'll figure out what's happening in the other part of the story by playing one other part of the story where another character will come out and something will happen. So there's lots of ways that it's intertwined. That's really nice. It's a pretty interesting way to tell the story. So overall, there's like I have really little to complain about with this game. It's probably um, it's probably, well, I mean, it's definitely one of the best games on the PS4 right now. There's um, very little that I would say is better at the moment. Um, the only the only thing that keeps it from being like the best kind of PS4 exclusive is that it's not a PS4 exclusive. It's also on the PS3. I don't know what that version looks like. It couldn't possibly look as good as this version though, because this one has like some crazy good effects. Um, but yeah, I'm at a loss here. I don't think I have anything more to say about Yakuza Zero, unless I'm forgetting some really big stuff. But I mean, I'm just gonna flip through the manual here for a second and see if I'm forgetting anything. But I don't think so. I don't know how long it took to beat the game. I didn't check my file before starting this video, but it was pretty long. It's pretty long if you do all the sub stories. It's probably not so long if you just blow through the main story and don't really care about the sub story stuff. You'd be extra weak, but you can do it. Um, I'm trying to think like, yeah, maybe that's it. Um, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. I just can't remember what it is right now. It's totally just left my head there. Yeah, I don't remember one kind of. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about what happens after you win. So after you beat the game, it's the standard kind of setup for this series. The legendary difficulty unlocks, so you can play on the kind of ultra hard difficulty, and you can import your save data into that legendary thing to kind of go through the game again. Um, and also there's the free roam mode where you can just kind of just run around either town without any story, just like an open free world, play in the play spots or finish up some character stuff that you didn't finish or whatever. So yeah, that's about it though. I don't think there's anything else that I can talk about. So I guess I'll end this video. It's more than a half hour anyway. So yeah, if you have any questions or you think I forgot something, which is definitely possible because there's so much stuff in this game, um, feel free to ask below. I'll try to answer you. So yeah, that's about it. I will catch you guys next time. See ya.